The business of desire in ancient Rome schedules, spaces and survival. Hey guys, tonight we are slipping back through time, not to the gleaming marble temples or the grand Senate floor of Rome, but to its grimy, beating and often broken heart. We're going to explore the oldest profession in the oldest of places, looking at the very real, very unglamorous business of desire. A world of strict schedules, suffocating spaces, and a desperate fight for survival. This journey is less about emperors and epic battles, and more about the whispered transactions in dark alleys and the lives of those whose names were never recorded. And a little reality check before we begin, based on the life expectancy diet and general workplace safety of the era. You probably won't survive this, so let's just enjoy it as a gentle, consequence-free drift through history. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd also love to see where and when you're listening from, so feel free to drop your city and local time in the comments below. It's always a quiet thrill to see how far these stories travel. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing that hits you isn't a sight, but a smell. It's a thick, complex wave of odors that you feel in the back of your throat. There's the sharp tang of cheap, sour wine spilling from a cracked amphora, the savory scent of sausages sizzling in greasy pans at a street-side stall. And underneath it all, the pervasive, damp stench of humanity packed too tightly together. This is the smell of the Suburra, Rome's most infamous and densely populated district, and it is now your world. You've been brought here by cart, one of a dozen silent, terrified faces sold at a provincial market and now delivered to the capital like so much livestock. The dream of Rome. The city of marble and gold dies on your tongue, replaced by the taste of dust and dread. You stand on unsteady legs, your worn leather sandals doing little to cushion your feet from the hard, uneven stones of the street. Above you, the sky is just a narrow blue ribbon squeezed between the leaning, teetering forms of the insulae. These are the apartment blocks of ancient Rome, wooden and brick tenements, stacked 5, 6, sometimes 7 stories high, each one a groaning, overcrowded hive of life. They seem to defy gravity, their upper floors jutting out over the street, casting the alleyways into a perpetual twilight. There's a distinct lack of any recognizable homeowners association here. Laundry hangs from every balcony, dripping onto the heads of passers-by, and the buildings themselves look like they're one strong gust of wind away from collapsing into a pile of splinters and tile. The noise is a physical force, a constant roar that presses in on you from all sides. It's a symphony of 100 languages and dialects from across the vast empire, the guttural curses of a Germanic legionary on leave, the rapid-fire Greek of a merchant haggling over the price of figs, the soft Latin of 2 women gossiping as they haul water from a public fountain. Children shriek and chase a stray dog through the crowd, their laughter sharp and bright against the dull thud of a blacksmith's hammer in a nearby workshop. From an open window above, a woman empties a bucket of what you sincerely hope is just dirty water, and you learn your first lesson of the Roman streets: always look up. Waste disposal was more of a suggestion than a system, and the closest thing to a public service announcement was the shout of "Look out below, just before impact." Your new owner, a man whose name you don't yet know, shoves you forward. He's not cruel, not yet just impatient. Business is business. You stumble into the flow of the crowd, a river of people pushing, shoving and sliding past one another. You see dock workers with sun-bronzed skin and calloused hands, pale-faced scribes with ink stains on their fingers, off-duty gladiators with the kind of swagger that only comes from cheating death for a living. And everywhere there are slaves distinguished not by chains, but by the hurried, anxious way they move their eyes, always cast down forever, trying to be invisible. This is the beating heart of the working city, far from the serene villas and political maneuvering on the Palatine Hill. The Suburra was a real place, a sprawling, chaotic neighborhood tucked into the valley between the Esquiline and Viminal hills, and it had a reputation. It was where the poor, the desperate, and the ambitious all collided. As you're herded down a side alley, the main smells of food and refuse are joined by something else, something acrid and chemical. You pass a doorway from which steam billows out, carrying the sharp, unmistakable stench of ammonia. This is a fullonica, a fuller's workshop, where Roman laundry gets its brilliant white sheen. And the secret ingredient, the quirky tidbit of Roman industry, is urine. Large clay pots were left outside for passers-by to contribute, and the collected liquid was then used for its ammonia content to bleach togos. It's an effective if pungent business model, and just one more layer in the complex olfactory tapestry of your new home. It's a smell you'll come to associate with the crushing reality of this place. The alley narrows the walls of the insulae, closing in. Here the sunlight barely reaches and the air grows cooler, heavier. Doors open directly onto the street, dark, uninviting rectangles leading into unseen rooms. From one of these doorways, a woman watches you pass. She is young, but her eyes are ancient. Her face is painted with a thick layer of white lead paste, giving her skin a ghostly pallor, and her lips are stained a deep, unnatural red. She says nothing, but her gaze is a physical weight. It's a look of appraisal, of understanding. It's a look that says, "I know why you're here." This is your first glimpse of the business, not the grand, reclining courtesans of legend, but the foot soldiers of the trade working from cramped ground-floor cells known as celli. Your owner stops before one such door, barely distinguishable from the others. He pulls a rusty key from a pouch at his belt. This is it. This is your destination. Historians still argue whether the population of Rome truly reached the 1 million people some ancient sources claim. But standing here in this suffocatingly dense sliver of the city, it feels like it could have been 10 million. The sheer compression of human life is overwhelming. Every inch of space is used, sold, or fought over. And you are now part of that equation, a new piece of property to be put to use in a tiny rented space. You are pushed through the door into a small, windowless room. The air is stale thick with the smell of cheap oil lamps and even cheaper perfume. There's a narrow bed against one wall, a simple wooden stool, and nothing else. This is not a home. This is a workspace, a stage, a cage. Your owner grunts something to you in a Latin too fast and colloquial for you to fully understand, but the meaning is clear enough from his gestures. You are to wait. You are to be ready. He leaves, bolting the door from the outside. The sound of the bolt sliding home is the loudest thing you've ever heard. It's the sound of a life ending and another much harder one beginning. You sit on the edge of the bed, the rough wool blanket scratching your skin. The roar of the Suburra is muffled now, a distant beast growling just outside your door. Here in the quiet, the reality begins to sink in. You are a commodity. Your value is now measured in the small bronze and copper coins that will pass from a stranger's hand to your owner's. Your survival depends not on your strength or your cleverness, but on your ability to endure, to compartmentalize, to become what is required. The business of desire in Rome isn't about passion, it's about economics. It's about the powerful and the powerless, the buyer and the sold. And you have just found out with brutal clarity which one you are. You take a slow, shaky breath, the air tasting of oil and old sorrows, and you wait for the sound of the bolt being drawn back. Hours pass, or maybe it's only minutes. Time moves like thick honey in this small, dark room. The distant sounds of the subura become a kind of white noise, a constant, featureless rumble. You're just about to surrender to a wave of exhausted sleep when the metallic scrape of the bolt makes you jolt upright, your heart hammering against your ribs. The door groans open, and your owner steps inside, silhouetted for a moment against the slightly less dark alleyway. He closes the door, and the room is plunged back into near blackness, save for the tiny flickering flame of a cheap clay oil lamp he places on the stool. Its light throws huge, dancing shadows against the walls, making the cramped space feel both smaller and more menacing. He pulls up the stool and sits, his knees almost touching yours. He smells of garlic and wine. In his hands, he holds a small leather pouch that jingles softly. He doesn't bother with introductions or pleasantries. This isn't a conversation. It's an inventory briefing. He is a man who owns things, and you are his newest acquisition. It's his duty to make sure you understand how you are to function. He upends the pouch onto the rough blanket of the bed, and a few small, dull metal objects tumble out. In the weak, wavering light, you see a couple of familiar copper coins and several small bronze discs like gaming tokens. This, he grunts, is your lesson. He picks up one of the copper coins. It's the smallest common denomination of Roman currency. It's a worn, unimpressive little thing worth next to nothing. You could buy a loaf of bread with one, maybe a small cup of watered-down wine. He holds it up between his thumb and forefinger. This, he says, his voice a low, gravelly rumble, is the bottom. The price of a soldier in a hurry, a drunk who can't stand a man who has nothing else. He makes it clear that this single coin is the base unit of your existence, now the absolute floor of your value. It's a humbling, crushing realization. Your entire being, your time, your compliance, all reduced to the cost of a snack. He then explains the hierarchy. 2 asses, maybe 4 for someone with more time, 8 for a request that is specific. He lays out the prices with the emotional detachment of a butcher discussing cuts of meat. It's a very, very depressing à la carte menu, and you are the only thing on it. Then he pushes aside the standard coins and nudges the bronze tokens forward. These are different. They are heavier, more deliberately crafted. He hands one to you. The metal is cool and smooth against your palm. On one side, in surprisingly detailed relief, is a scene of 2 people entwined. It's explicit, anatomical, and utterly devoid of any tenderness. It's a diagram, not an embrace. You flip it over. The reverse side bears a single clear Roman numeral 16. 16. He explains that these are for the foreigners, the illiterate, the ones who don't want any confusion. It's a pictorial menu for those who can't read the specials. They point to the picture they want, they see the number, they pay the price in asses. Simple. No room for error, no need for language. These little discs are known as spintriae, and they are one of Rome's more curious and debated artifacts. Your new master doesn't care for the debate, of course. For him, they are just practical. But historians still argue whether they were truly used as universal brothel tokens. Some scholars suggest they were a simple tool to overcome the language barrier in a city filled with people from every corner of the empire. Others propose they were used to avoid exchanging coins bearing the sacred image of the emperor within a place considered so sordid and profane, a bit of superstitious respect, perhaps. A third theory suggests they might have been nothing more than gaming pieces or locker tokens for the public baths, their explicit imagery just a reflection of the Romans' more casual attitude towards such things. But here in this room, your owner presents them as fact. They are the currency of this specific world, a silent, efficient language of transaction. He makes you memorize the numerals and their corresponding values. He taps the token with the 616. "This is a good price," he says, a flicker of something like pride in his voice. "This is for a full night. For a merchant with a heavy purse, this is the goal." But his tone implies it's a goal you reach on his terms, not yours. He then goes on a brief, bitter tangent about taxes. He tells you that a portion of every single transaction, every as that crosses your path, belongs to the emperor. It was Caligula, he spits, who first had the bright idea to tax the city's flesh trade, sending his collectors into every brothel and back room. It's a mainstream historical fact that this tax existed, a clear sign that the state, while publicly scorning this world, was more than happy to profit from it. Your owner seems personally offended by this, not on a moral level, but as a businessman complaining about overhead. "Even the emperor's men have to get their hands dirty counting our coins," he mutters, as if that's the greatest injustice of all. After the lesson on currency, he moves on to the unwritten rules. His rules. Rule 1. All money, every last coin, every token goes directly to him. You are provided with a room with food, a daily ration of bread and olives, and with protection. In exchange, you have no possessions. Hiding even a single as is stealing, and he has a very low tolerance for thieves. Rule 2. No attachments. You are to be pleasant, accommodating, but never familiar. The men who come here are not your friends. They are customers. Any connection you feel is an illusion, and it is a dangerous one. Rule 3. No trouble. If a client is rough, you endure it. If he is drunk, you sober him up enough to pay. You are not to fight, to argue, or to refuse. Your safety, he implies, is guaranteed only as long as you are a profitable and compliant asset. There's no customer satisfaction survey, and certainly no employee complaint box. He watches you, his eyes narrowed in the flickering light, trying to gauge if you understand. He's not looking for intelligence or wit or personality. He is looking for a specific kind of emptiness, a readiness to be filled with his instructions. He is teaching you the geometry of survival in this new world. It is a world of straight lines and sharp corners, of clear prices and brutal consequences. He gathers the coins and tokens, all except one. He leaves the spintria with the numeral 616 on the blanket beside you. A reminder, he says, of what a good night's work looks like. He gets up his knees, cracking in the quiet room, and moves to the door. "Someone will bring you food soon." He adds his hand on the bolt. It's the closest thing to kindness he has offered, and it still feels like a threat. Then he's gone, and the bolt slides home again, sealing you back into the darkness. You pick up the token. It feels heavier now, impossibly so. The cool bronze seems to absorb all the warmth from your hand. You trace the stark image with your fingertip, then the cold, hard lines of the numeral on the back. This small, cheap object is your new vocabulary. It is your price list, your job description, and your contract all in one. There is no fine print to read, no clause to negotiate. There is only the image, the number, and the silent, crushing weight of it in your palm. The first time the bolt slides open for business, you don't even have time to be properly afraid. The man who enters is large, smelling of the river docks, a mixture of salt fish and sweat. He doesn't look at your face. He shoves 2 copper asses into your hand, his calloused palm rough against yours, and the transaction is over almost before it has begun. He is not cruel, merely efficient. He is a man satisfying a simple physical need with the directness of someone buying bread. He leaves without a word. and you are left in the echoing silence, the two small, warm coins still clutched in your fist. You sit there on the edge of the bed until the Leno unlocks the door to collect his payment, his hand outstretched, his expression unreadable. He doesn't ask if you're okay. The question itself would be absurd. This becomes the rhythm of your days and nights. The door, the man, the coins, the owner. The faces begin to blur into one another. A young legionary, barely old enough to have a beard, who seems more scared than you are. A merchant who haggles over the price for a few extra minutes of time, as if he's buying pottery in the forum. A drunk who falls asleep before he even closes the door properly. They are a parade of the city's lonely, bored and entitled men. Your tiny room, your cellar, is the lowest rung on the ladder of this trade. It's an independent operation in theory, but in reality you are completely isolated, a single lonely point of commerce in a vast, uncaring city. Your only human contact is a series of brief, anonymous encounters and the silent, demanding presence of your owner. It is a profoundly lonely and vulnerable existence. Then, one evening, the Leno arrives at an unscheduled time. He looks you over, a quick, appraising glance, like a farmer checking his livestock. "You're moving," he says, and that's all the explanation you get. He seems pleased, which makes you nervous. A pleased Leno usually means more work, not better conditions. You are led out of the suffocating alleyway and into the main artery of the Subura. The sun is setting, painting the smoky sky in hues of orange and purple. The street is even more crowded now, teeming with people released from their day's labor, all seeking food, drink, and distraction. You follow your owner through the throng, a ghost in the twilight, invisible and insignificant. He leads you away from the district you're beginning to know and into a warren of unfamiliar streets. Here the buildings are still tall and crowded, but they seem a little more stable. The noise is different too. More laughter and music, less arguing and shouting. He stops before a two-story building that sits squarely on a street corner. Unlike your hidden cell, this place announces its purpose. Phallic carvings, symbols of good fortune and fertility, are etched into the stones around the entrance. A lamp hangs above the door, casting a pool of reddish light onto the street. You've been promoted, it seems, from a private closet to a slightly larger, state-recognized one. This is a proper lupanar, a purpose-built Roman brothel. The moment you step inside, the difference is overwhelming. The air is thick with smoke from a dozen oil lamps, heavy with a cloying mixture of spilled wine, cheap perfume, and human sweat. It's loud. Men are talking and laughing in a central hallway, and from the small rooms that line the corridor, you can hear muffled sounds of activity. There are other women here, 5 or 6 of them lounging on benches talking to the customers. They wear thin, brightly colored tunics, their faces painted in the same ghostly white mask you saw on your first day. They look you over with a practiced indifference. You are not a friend or a sister in misery. You are new competition. The Leno hands you over to a severe-looking older woman, the Vilica, who runs the day-to-day operations. She points you to one of the small cells. It's identical to your old one, a narrow stone platform built into the wall serving as a bed with a thin mattress on top. But here the walls are plastered and painted. Above the doorway of each cell is a fresco, a small explicit painting. Each one depicts a different scene, a different arrangement of figures. And this is where a fascinating historical debate lies. Historians still argue whether the paintings on the walls were simple erotic decorations to set the mood, a kind of advertising, a visual menu of the specialties available within, or perhaps even instructional guides for nervous or inexperienced clients. Looking at the almost clinical detail in the artwork, any of those theories seem plausible. You run your hand over the cool, plastered wall of your new cell, and your fingers find a series of scratches. You lean closer in the dim light. It's graffiti. The walls are covered in it. This is the quirky, humanizing detail of a place like this. While the building itself is a machine for commerce, its walls became a public ledger of emotions. You can just make out the Latin letters. Someone has scrawled a man's name, Rufus was here. Below it, a more boastful declaration, something like, I had a wonderful time with many girls. It's the world's oldest customer review section. But then you see another written in a more delicate script, Lucilla is my sweet one. And below that, a woman's name, simply Victoria. These were the real people who passed through these rooms, not just the buyers, but the sellers, leaving a tiny, fleeting mark of their existence. For a moment, you feel a strange connection to this Victoria, this Lucilla, a shared experience that cuts across the centuries. The Villica explains the rules of the house. They are stricter here. You work in shifts. You are not allowed to leave. You will serve whoever pays, and you will do it with a smile. The efficiency is chilling. The isolated misery of the back alley cellar is replaced by the industrialized misery of the lupanar. It is a more organized, more controlled, and somehow more dehumanizing environment. Here you are not just a piece of property, you are a cog in a well-oiled machine, easily replaceable. Your owner will collect his earnings from the Villica at the end of the week, a tidy sum from all his assets working under one roof. It's efficient, it's business. You are left in your new room, the sounds of the establishment pressing in on you. A man laughs boisterously in the hall. Two of the other women argue in low, sharp tones. Through the thin wall you can hear the rhythmic creak of a bed. This is your world now. Not the silent dread of the lonely cell, but the constant churning noise of the marketplace. You lie down on the hard stone bed, staring up at the darkened ceiling, and realize the truth. You haven't moved up in the world. You've just been moved to a different part of the same cage, one with more bars and more inmates. The first morning in the lupanar is a shock of structured chaos. Unlike the solitary confinement of the cellar here, life begins with the rising sun. The Villica rouses everyone with a sharp clap of her hands. There are chores to be done, floors to be swept, lamps to be refilled with oil, meager rations of bread and cheese to be distributed. It's all brutally efficient. After the morning tasks, your owner arrives. He doesn't look at the other women. His focus is entirely on you. Time to make you legal, he announces to the Villica, who nods in understanding. A shiver of cold dread, sharp and familiar, runs down your spine. Making anything about your new life legal sounds like the opposite of a good thing. He pulls you out into the morning light of the city. Rome, in the morning, is a different beast than the twilight creature you've come to know. It's a city of purpose, of commerce. Carts laden with produce rumble over the cobblestones. Shopkeepers throw open their heavy wooden shutters, and men in clean white togas stride purposefully towards the forum. You, in your simple drab tunic, feel utterly out of place, a smudge of grey against a vibrant canvas. The Leno walks with a confident gait, navigating the streets with an ease that tells you he has made this journey many times before. He is taking you to see the aediles, the city magistrates, whose responsibilities cover everything from the grain supply and public games to the maintenance of roads and the regulation of brothels. You eventually arrive at a stately columned building. Inside, the air is cool and smells of papyrus and dust. It's a hive of bureaucratic activity. Clerks with ink-stained fingers rush back and forth, their arms laden with scrolls. Men stand in small groups, arguing in low, serious tones. It feels like the ancient equivalent of a department of motor vehicles, an air of immense importance mixed with profound, soul-crushing boredom. There's no line to stand in, of course. You just wait in a corner, trying to make yourself as small as possible until your owner is finally acknowledged by a weary-looking clerk sitting at a high wooden desk. Your owner does all the talking. He presents a wooden tablet with his name and the address of the lupanar. The clerk dips his stylus into an ink pot and prepares to write on a fresh sheet of papyrus. He then looks at you, truly looks at you for the first time. "Name," he says, his voice flat. You give your real name, the name your mother gave you, and for a moment it feels like a betrayal to speak it in this place. The Leno scoffs. "Her name is Felicitas," he interrupts, giving you a common slave name that means luck or happiness in a stroke of grim irony. The clerk, without batting an eye, scratches down the new name. He asks your age and where you were born. The details are logged in neat, precise Latin, your personal history condensed into 2 lines in a government ledger. This simple act of registration is your official entry into a special class of Roman society. You have just been branded with infamia. This is the central mainstream fact of your new life. Infamia wasn't just social stigma, it was a defined legal status. The clerk doesn't explain what it means, and the Leno certainly doesn't, but its consequences will now govern every aspect of your survival. It means you are, in the eyes of Roman law, an infamous person. You are stripped of the fundamental rights that protect a citizen. You cannot vote or hold office, which is irrelevant to you as a slave, but it's just the beginning. More importantly, you lose your standing in court. You cannot act as a witness in most legal proceedings, nor can you file a complaint or a lawsuit on your own behalf. If a client assaults you, if your owner cheats you, if you are a witness to a crime, the law provides no recourse. Your voice is legally silenced. You are now in the same legal category as a whole host of other public figures the Romans considered disreputable. Actors who spoke other men's words on a stage, gladiators who sold their bodies for violent public spectacle, and, of course, Leonines like your owner. The Romans, it seems, had a deep-seated suspicion of anyone who put their body on public display for pay. It was seen as a forfeiture of personal dignity and control. So now you share a legal box with the most famous charioteers and the most feared gladiators, people who might be adored by the masses, but were officially despised by the state. As your owner pays the registration fee, another business expense, he grumbles about you contemplate the chilling purpose of this whole exercise. Historians still argue whether this system of registration was primarily a tool for taxation and social control, a way for the state to keep a watchful eye on its most undesirable elements while profiting from them, or if it also served as a strange backhanded form of state protection. By licensing the lupanar, the state was officially acknowledging its existence, perhaps giving it a sliver of legitimacy that protected it from being randomly shut down by a zealous magistrate. Was it a shield, however thin, or just another chain? Standing in this soulless office, it certainly feels more like a chain. Once the transaction is complete, the clerk dismisses you with a wave, his attention already on the next person. On the way back to the brothel, your owner makes a stop at a small stall selling used clothing. He rummages through a pile of garments and pulls out a toga. Not the pristine white toga of a respectable citizen, but a cheap, coarsely woven one, dyed a garish, eye-watering shade of yellow. This is a quirky and much debated tidbit of the Roman sex trade. Some ancient sources suggest that registered prostitutes were required to wear the toga, the symbol of male citizenship, as a mark of public shame, a visual inversion of the natural order. Others claim they were simply marked by flashy, multicolored clothing. Either way, the message was the same: You were to be visibly different, set apart from the respectable women of the city in their modest stolas. He hands you the rough garment. "Wear this," he commands. "Now everyone will know what you are." It's your new uniform, the physical manifestation of your infamia. Back in your cell at the Lupanar, you look at the garish toga. It smells of dust and dye. You drape it over your shoulders, the rough fabric scratching your skin. There is no mirror, but you don't need one. You can feel the weight of it. It is the weight of the law, the weight of public scorn, the weight of a future where you have no name, but the one you were given, and no rights, but the ones your owner chooses to grant you. You are now Felicitas, and you are by the full authority of the Roman state infamous. The garish toga is not just for official appearances. It is your daily uniform. The day after your registration, the routine begins, and you learn that it is as unyielding as the stone bed in your cell. The Vilica wakes you before the first light of dawn has touched the sky. Her sharp voice cuts through the exhausted fog of your sleep. There are no gentle awakenings here. Time is money, and the day's preparations are extensive. You and the other women you are slowly learning their professional names, Lyra, Delia, Chloe, are put to work immediately. It's like a roommate situation from the underworld, complete with a chore wheel that you are perpetually stuck on. First you haul water. The nearest public fountain is 2 streets away, and the large clay amphorae are heavy and awkward. You make 2 trips, your arms and back screaming in protest, your feet slipping on the slick, damp stones. Back at the Lupanar, the water is used for everything, for washing the floors of the main hall and the tiny cells for the morning's meager cooking, and for a quick cold wash for yourselves. Hygiene is a matter of business, not comfort. After the cleaning, you are set to grinding grain with a small heavy stone quern, a mind-numbing repetitive task that fills the air with a fine chalky dust. This is the truth of your existence, hours of grueling domestic labor that bookend the few hours of the work you were actually purchased for. Sometimes the Vilica sends you to the market. This is both a relief and a curse. It is a relief to be out of the stuffy, suffocating atmosphere of the brothel, to feel the sun on your skin. But it is a curse because you must go out in your uniform, your badge of shame. Accompanied by a hulking male slave who acts as a guard, you walk through the morning crowds, your bright, vulgar toga, a beacon of your profession. The respectable matrons of the city pull their own modest stolas tighter and steer their children away from you. Men stare, some with contempt, some with a flash of recognition, some with a crude, speculative grin. You learn to stare straight ahead, your face a blank mask, your eyes fixed on the task at hand, buying bread, cheap vegetables, and a jug of wine for the evening's clients. The market itself is a sensory assault. The butcher stalls reek of blood. The fishmongers' tables are piled high with glistening silver-scaled bodies, and the scent from the fermented fish sauce stall, the infamous garum, is a whole new level of olfactory warfare. You thought the fuller's shop was bad. The garum merchant is playing a different sport entirely. Yet amidst the chaos, you see other lives being lived. You see a baker, his face white with flour, laughing with a customer. You see 2 friends haggling playfully over a bolt of cloth. And you see the agricultural slaves brought in from the countryside to deliver produce, their skin burned dark by the sun, their bodies lean and wiry from hard labor. As you stand there, a silent observer in your ridiculous toga, you can't help but wonder. Historians still argue whether the lives of urban prostitutes were marginally better or worse than those of, say, an agricultural slave on a rural estate. Was the endless back-breaking work in the fields under a brutal overseer's whip a worse fate? Or was the indoor psychological violence, the constant degradation of the spirit, a heavier burden to bear? There is no scale to weigh such miseries, and looking at the haunted eyes of a field slave, you find no easy answer. You return to the lupanar as the morning begins to wane. The second phase of the day begins preparation. You eat your own meal of bread and olives, standing in the small courtyard before the villika inspects everyone. This is when you must transform yourself from a weary domestic slave into an object of desire. You sit on your stool, a small polished bronze disc serving as a mirror, and begin the ritual. First, a thick paste of white lead and chalk is applied to your face, erasing any sign of your natural skin tone, hiding the dark circles of exhaustion under your eyes. It's less about glamour and more about spackling over the cracks. Your cheeks and lips are stained red with ochre or the dregs of cheap wine. Your eyes are lined with black coal, a mixture of ash and soot, to make them appear larger and more dramatic. If your own hair is not thick or long enough, there are wigs crafted from the hair of captured Germanic slaves, their blonde and red locks a prized commodity. The Roman workday for most free men was short. Business in the forum, manual labor, all of it tended to wrap up in the early afternoon. This is a crucial historical fact that dictates the rhythm of your life. Once their duties were done, men would head to the public baths to socialize, exercise, and get clean. And after the baths, their evening was free for leisure. That is when your workday truly begins. As the afternoon sun begins to slant through the city, the first clients arrive. The lupanar transforms. The doors are thrown open, and the villika lights the lamps, even though it's still light outside, creating a perpetual smoky twilight within. You notice that some of the lamps are themselves part of the decor, a quirky fringe tidbit of the trade. They are molded into strange, erotic shapes, their flickering flames casting suggestive, wiggling shadows on the walls. You are expected to be in the main hall available on display. You must smile, laugh at crude jokes, and endure the casual appraising touches of men deciding how to spend their coins. There is no choice in the matter. The villika's sharp eyes are always on you. When a client makes his choice, you lead him back to your cell, the same small, featureless room you spent the morning cleaning. The work itself becomes a blur, a series of disconnected moments of anonymous bodies and muttered words. You learn to retreat deep inside yourself to a quiet, empty place where the person in the room is not really you. It is a performance, and survival depends on never ever forgetting that. The evening wears on. The flow of men is constant. The air grows thick and hot. The night is a long, monotonous stretch of time punctuated by the clink of coins and the scrape of your cell door opening and closing. Exhaustion is a physical entity, a heavy cloak you cannot shrug off. Finally, late into the night, when the rest of the city is asleep, the last drunken customer stumbles out into the darkness. The main door is barred, but the day is not over. There is cleaning to be done, the mess of the evening to be wiped away, preparing the stage for it to all happen again tomorrow. The final ritual of the night is the accounting. The Leno sits at a table with the villika, and she empties a large leather bag of its coins. They count the day's earnings, the clatter of bronze and copper echoing in the quiet hall. This is the only thing that matters. This pile of metal is the measure of your worth, the final score of your collective performance. It is the only performance review you will ever get. After the count is done, you are dismissed. You stumble back to your cell, not even bothering to remove the thick paint from your face. You fall onto the hard stone bed and into a sleep so deep it feels like a small death. And you pray that you don't dream, because tomorrow the exact same day will happen all over again. For weeks, your life is a flat circle of drudgery and performance, A repeating loop defined by the walls of the lupanar and the few streets you cross to get to the market. You become accustomed to the rhythm, the exhaustion, a permanent resident in your bones. Then one afternoon, the Leno singles you out again. "You're getting clean today," he says. He hands you a small bag containing a flask of oil and a curved metal scraper. It's not an act of kindness. His eyes have the familiar glint of a calculating merchant. "And you will behave yourself. You are representing my investment. You are being taken to the public baths, the thermae. This is an outing, a special assignment, and you understand immediately that it is just another stage grander and more complex than the one you're used to. The journey takes you out of the Subura's tangled gloom and towards the heart of the city. The sheer scale of the building he leads you to is breathtaking. It's less of a bathhouse and more of a small, very humid city. The baths of Trajan or Agrippa or one of the other colossal imperial complexes, they are monuments to the engineering and social obsessions of Rome. You pass through enormous archways into a vast open-air garden surrounded by colonnades. Men are exercising in a sandy courtyard, the palestra, their bodies glistening with sweat and oil. Others sit under the shade of trees, reading scrolls or engaged in heated philosophical debate. You even see food vendors selling snacks and drinks. This is the mainstream, undeniable fact of the Thermae. They were the social epicenter of Roman life, a place for leisure, business, networking and hygiene, all rolled into one magnificent package. You enter the main bath building and the noise hits you like a physical wave. It's a roar of hundreds of voices shouting and laughing, all amplified and echoed by the high vaulted ceilings and marble-clad walls. Steam hangs thick in the air, smelling of warm water, human sweat and the scented oils used by the wealthy. Your Leno pays the small entrance fee for you. The baths were famously affordable, open to nearly everyone, and points you toward the women's section. While some smaller baths had mixed bathing, the larger ones often had separate facilities or different hours for men and women. He gives you a final warning look before disappearing into the men's entrance. His message is clear: he will be nearby watching. You find your way to the changing room, the apoditerium. It's a crowded, chaotic space. Women of all ages and seemingly all classes are chattering as they undress. They place their folded clothes into small niches or loculi set into the walls. A wealthy-looking matron has a slave to guard her belongings, a wise precaution. Theft in the baths was rampant, a constant source of anxiety, and for the bathhouse scribes, a constant source of curse tablets directed at the thieves. You have nothing to steal but your garish toga, which you fold away with a sense of relief, and the cheap tunic beneath it. For a few hours at least, you are not wearing your uniform, but you quickly discover that nakedness is its own kind of uniform, and you are still very much on display. Following the other women, you begin the ritual of bathing. First, you enter the tepidarium, a warm, pleasant room designed to let your body adjust to the heat and to open the pores. People lounge on marble benches, gossiping and relaxing. From there, you move to the caldarium, the hot room. The heat in here is intense, fed by the massive furnaces of the hypocaust system beneath the floor. The air is thick with steam, and you begin to sweat profusely. This is where the real cleaning begins, and it's a wonderfully strange process. The Romans didn't use soap. Instead, you pour the cheap olive oil from your flask over your skin, rubbing it in until you are covered in a greasy film. Then, using the curved metal tool from your bag, the strigil, you begin to scrape. This is the quirky and slightly gross tidbit of Roman hygiene. The strigil is used to scrape away the oil along with all the dirt, sweat and dead skin cells it has trapped. It's like a spa treatment designed by a mechanic. The gunk that comes off, known as strigmentum, was considered by some to have medicinal properties and was occasionally collected and sold. You do your best to scrape your own back, feeling both the strange satisfaction of getting clean and a profound sense of disgust. As you look around the steamy room, you see the complex social fabric of Rome on full display. In one corner, a group of wealthy women attended by their slaves laugh amongst themselves, their expensive perfumed oils filling the air. In another, a group of working-class women, their bodies tough and worn from labor, scrub each other's backs with vigor. It's a perfect illustration of a debate that still occupies historians. What was the true extent of social mixing in the baths? Legally, the space was open to almost everyone. But in practice, you can see the invisible walls. The rich and the poor share the same hot air, but they do not share the same conversation. They occupy the same building, but inhabit different worlds. You, of course, belong to neither. You are an outsider, a tool of commerce, and your presence is tolerated as long as you remain unobtrusive. But you are not here to be unobtrusive. You are here to be seen. As you move back into the tepidarium, you begin to feel the weight of eyes on you. A man you don't recognize but who carries himself with an air of wealth watches you for a moment too long. A quiet word is exchanged between him and another man, who then happens to wander past you and murmur a compliment. This is the business of the baths. It's solicitation, but laundered through a filter of social etiquette. It lacks the crude directness of the lupanar, making it infinitely more unnerving. It's the Roman version of a red carpet event, only with less clothing and a lot more steam. You catch a glimpse through a grand archway leading to the men's section of your leno. He is talking to a senator or someone who looks like one. He gestures subtly, almost imperceptibly in your direction. You are the product he is currently pitching. The final stage of the bath is the frigidarium, a large, deep pool of unheated water. Stepping into the cold water is a violent shock to the system, closing your pores and jolting you into a state of sharp, sudden clarity. For a single, breathtaking moment, the heat, the noise, and the anxiety are washed away. You feel for the first time in a long time simply clean. But the feeling is fleeting. As you pull yourself from the pool, shivering, you know that the performance is not over. The business of the day is just beginning. You have been advertised, and now your owner will be looking to close the deal. The clean feeling on your skin is a lie. You are still covered in the grime of your trade. The shock of the cold plunge pool has barely subsided when your owner intercepts you at the exit of the baths. He has a look of grim satisfaction on his face, the look of a predator who has just secured a kill. "You have an appointment," he says, his voice low. There is no talk of returning to the lupanar, to the familiar grind. The advertising at the baths has paid off, and paid off quickly. He steers you away from the direction of the subura and into a district where the streets are wider and cleaner, the buildings more stately. The destination is not another brothel, but a brightly lit, boisterous tavern, a corpona from which music and loud laughter spill out into the evening air. This is a different world from the desperate transactional silence of your cell. It's a place of food, drink, and deeply questionable life choices, all happening at high volume under one smoky roof. The ground floor is a chaotic scene. Men of some means, merchants, clerks, off-duty officials recline on dining couches arranged in small alcoves, their voices raised in argument over a game of dice. The air is thick with the smells of roasting meat, garlic, and hot spiced wine, the popular drink known as calda. A young man in the corner plays a frantic tune on a flute, his music barely audible above the din. This is another hub of Roman social life, less grand than the baths but far more intoxicating. Your owner speaks quietly to the proprietor, a stout, florid man with shrewd eyes who is known as the kaupo or innkeeper. A handful of coins are discreetly exchanged. The cowpo gives you a quick, dismissive glance before leading you up a rickety wooden staircase to the second floor away from the public room. As you climb, you pass one of the serving girls, an ancilla, coming down the stairs with an empty tray. A patron on the landing reaches out and grabs her arm. She flinches for a split second before a practiced, weary smile appears on her face. She laughs, says something light and placating, and gently pulls her arm free before continuing on her way. In that fleeting moment, you see it all. This is the central unwritten rule of a place like this. These inns and taverns, a mainstream feature of every Roman city, very often served as unofficial brothels. The serving girls were slaves just like you, and their servitude was a blurry, undefined line. They were expected to serve wine clear away, plates, laugh at jokes, and if the price was right and the guest was insistent, provide any other service the capo demanded of them. They had to be experts in multitasking, balancing a tray of food, dodging a drunken grope, and deflecting a proposition all at the same time. You realize, with a sudden sinking feeling, that their work might be even harder than yours. In the lupanar, the terms are brutally clear. Here, the transaction is hidden behind a veneer of hospitality, forcing these women to navigate a constant state of ambiguity and unwelcome advances. You are shown into a small private dining room. Reclining on a couch is the man from the baths, the one your owner had pointed out. He is older, dressed in a fine linen tunic, and he smiles when you enter. The innkeeper bows slightly and backs out of the room, closing the door behind him. The man gestures for you to sit. This is not going to be a quick, anonymous encounter like in the brothel. This is something else. He's not just paying for your time. He's paying for the illusion that you're enjoying it, which is a much more expensive special effect. He claps his hands, and a moment later, the same serving girl from the stairs enters. She doesn't look at you, keeping her eyes demurely lowered as he orders the best the house has to offer. He asks for Falernian wine, one of the most famous and expensive vintages in Italy, a quirky but clear display of his status. He orders dishes you've only ever smelled from a distance in the market: roasted dormice with honey bread with a garlic and cheese spread called moritum and imported dates. When the girl leaves, you are left in an awkward silence. He begins to ask you questions: where you are from, what you think of the city. You give the simple false answers your Leno coached you to give. You are a character playing a part. The labor here is not physical, not yet. It is emotional. You must seem interested, charmed, impressed. While he talks, you think about the innkeeper, the cowpo. Historians still argue about the exact social standing of these men. Were they all viewed by Roman society as nothing more than glorified pimps operating in the same despised category as your Leno? Or were some seen as legitimate small business owners, simply providing the full suite of services, lodging, food and companionship that a weary traveler or a lonely local might desire? Watching the smooth, professional way this corpo handled your owner and this wealthy client, you suspect the truth is a spectrum. He is a businessman, and his inventory includes wine-roasted meat and the bodies of the women who work for him. He is simply more subtle about it than your master. The evening drags on. The man drinks his expensive wine and talks mostly about himself. His business ventures, his political opinions, his worthless son-in-law. You nod and smile and murmur appreciative comments. You are a mirror reflecting back the image of the important, fascinating man he believes himself to be. This requires a level of concentration and self-control that is profoundly draining, more so than 10 faceless transactions in your cell. Finally, the plates are cleared away, and the purpose of the evening shifts to its inevitable conclusion. It is quiet, private, and clothed in a pretense of mutual desire that makes it feel far more violating than the blunt commerce of the lupanar. Much later, your owner collects you from a side door of the tavern. He doesn't ask how it went. He already knows. The price was agreed upon in advance, a sum that could likely have bought you 3 times over. He walks you back through the now quiet streets, the moon hanging high over the sleeping city. When you finally reach the lupanar and are shoved back into your small, familiar cell, the feeling is one of grim relief. The hard stone bed, the stale air, it is a known misery. Tonight you learned that there are other venues for the business of desire places where the cage is furnished with silk cushions and scented with expensive wine. But it is a cage all the same, and perhaps an even more insidious one. Your successful appointment at the tavern has changed your owner's calculus. He looks at you differently now, with the speculative gaze of a prospector who thinks he may have found a fleck of gold in a muddy stream. He sees a potential for a higher return on his investment. But you are rough, unpolished. The blunt, silent compliance required for the lupanar is not the same as the sophisticated performance required for the upper echelons of the trade. And so your education must continue. One afternoon he pulls you from your chores. "Come with me," he orders, "and keep your mouth shut and your eyes open." He is taking you on a field trip to see the pinnacle of your profession. The journey is the longest you have yet taken within the city. You leave the grime and chaos of the Subura far behind, climbing up towards the cleaner, quieter slopes of the Quirinal Hill. Here the air is clearer, the noise is a distant hum, and the towering, rickety insulae are replaced by elegant single-family homes, a domus, and the more luxurious stone-built apartment blocks. There are no foul-smelling workshops here, no screaming vendors. Just the quiet footsteps of litter-bearers carrying their wealthy mistresses and the murmur of educated conversation from shaded porticos. Your Leno stops before an expensive-looking apartment building. He speaks to a doorman, a slave in a clean, well-made tunic, and you are led up a wide marble staircase to a polished wooden door. When the door opens, you step into another world. The room is large and airy, with a high ceiling and a floor decorated with intricate mosaics depicting scenes from Greek myths. There are more silk cushions in this one room than you have seen in your entire life. It's a fire hazard of pure luxury. Sunlight streams in from a small enclosed courtyard where a tiny fountain bubbles, its gentle splashing the only sound in the room. The air smells of expensive cedarwood incense and a faint floral perfume. And then you see her. Reclining on a wide couch reading from a papyrus scroll is the woman your Leno has come to see. She is a meretrix, a high-end courtesan. Her name, you learn, is Cleo. She is not a young girl, but a woman in her prime, perhaps 30 years old. Her beauty is not the painted, desperate mask you are used to, but something cultivated and confident. Her dark hair is intricately braided with pearls, and her simple, elegant silk gown drapes over her body with a casual grace. She looks up as you enter, her expression one of mild annoyance at being interrupted. She addresses your owner not as a superior or even an equal, but as a tradesman she has business with. "Marcus," she says, her Latin fluid, "and educated, you're late." He, in turn, is deferential, almost obsequious. It is a power dynamic you have never witnessed before. He is her inferior here. They discuss business in low tones, the price of a shipment of wine from Gaul, the name of a magistrate who can be bribed. You stand silently by the door, trying to be invisible, and you understand that this woman is not just a courtesan. She is a businesswoman, an operator, a hub of information in the complex social web of Rome. This is the mainstream historical reality of the most successful of her kind. Like the famous courtesans of Greece, an elite Roman meretrix could be a figure of immense informal power, a confidant to senators, and a broker of deals, all from the comfort of her couch. She could probably debate philosophy with a Stoic and then charge him handsomely for the privilege. It's a very specific and very marketable skill set. As they talk, a flash of movement in the corner of the room catches your eye. Chained to a small ornate perch is a monkey which chatters and preens its tiny, intelligent eyes, watching everything. Of course, she has a monkey. This quirky, exotic pet is the ultimate status symbol, a piece of living luxury imported from Africa or the East, the ancient Roman equivalent of a designer dog that fits in a handbag. It is one more detail that underscores the vast, unbridgeable chasm between her world and yours. Their business concludes. Your owner passes her a small, heavy purse, and she dismisses him with a nod. He bows slightly and turns to leave, pulling you with him. But just as you reach the door, it opens and a man enters. He is a senator, you can tell by the broad purple stripe on his toga. He is older, powerful, and he greets Cleo not as a client visiting a brothel, but as a man coming home. He kisses her on the cheek, and she smiles a warm, genuine-looking smile. He is her patron. He is the source of all this luxury. You and your Leno flatten yourselves against the wall as he passes. The senator barely glances at you. He and Cleo begin to talk their conversation, easy and familiar. They speak of politics, of a new poem by a famous writer, of a social scandal. It looks for all the world like a partnership of equals. And yet you see a flicker of something in her eyes as he speaks, a watchfulness, a careful calibration of her responses. It makes you wonder, and it brings to light a deep, scholarly debate. Historians still argue about the true level of independence these high-class courtesans actually possessed. Were they powerful, independent entrepreneurs, proto-feminists, navigating a patriarchal world on their own terms? Or were they in the end always dependent on the whims and the wealth of a single powerful man, a protector who was in effect a sole proprietor of their lives? Her career is built on a foundation of charm, her intellect and the continued favor of this man, a foundation about as stable as a Subura apartment block in an earthquake. You see a brief example. He makes a casual suggestion for a dinner party she will host, and his tone, though light, contains the unmistakable ring of a command. Her smile doesn't falter as she agrees, but you recognize the look in her eyes. It is the same look the serving girl at the tavern had. It is a look of careful, calculated compliance. Her cage is gilded, furnished with silks and poetry and exotic pets, but the door is still locked and a man still holds the key. Your owner pulls you from the room and you descend the marble stairs back into the real world. The walk back to the Subura is long and silent. The glimpse of Cleo's life was not inspiring. It was not a vision of a future you could possibly attain. It was a lesson in the vast and varied architecture of the prisons women like you inhabit. Some are small, dark, and filthy. Others are spacious, beautiful, and filled with light. But they are all prisons. You arrive back at the Lupanar, the smells of cheap wine and desperation welcoming you home. You are no closer to freedom, but you have a much clearer and much more disheartening understanding of the game. The glimpse into Cleo's world of refined luxury marks a turning point. Your owner, Marcus, now sees a clear path to greater profit, and that path requires you to be more than just a warm body in a cold cell. It requires you to become a work of art, an illusion. The next day, the Vilica summons you. She presents you with a small carved wooden box. It is not a gift, it is a toolkit. Inside are small terracotta pots, a polished bronze mirror, bone combs, and slender sticks of carved wood. This is your new responsibility, the meticulous construction of a desirable facade. Your education in cultus, the Roman art of personal adornment and beauty, is about to begin. The Vilica is a harsh and practical teacher. She starts with your face. She takes a pinch of fine white powder from a pot and shows you how to mix it with a drop of water to make a paste. This is carussa, a white lead makeup base. She applies it to your skin, covering every freckle, every imperfection, until your face is a smooth, ghostly white canvas. The skin of a lady is the skin of a statue, she says, her voice flat. It should have no flaws. She doesn't mention, or perhaps doesn't even know, that the lead you are slathering on your skin is a slow-acting poison seeping into your blood with every application. It gives you that flawless pale complexion with the minor side effect of eventually causing nerve damage, insanity, and death. Beauty is pain, and in ancient Rome, it is also apparently heavy metal toxicity. Next are the colors. From another pot, she takes a pinch of deep red powder, pulverized ochre. She shows you how to apply a touch to your cheeks for a youthful blush, and how to stain your lips to a vibrant bee-stung red. The effect is dramatic, transforming your pale mask into the face of a doll. Then come the eyes. She takes a stick and dips it into a pot of black powder, a coal made of ash and powdered antimony. With a surgeon's precision, she lines your eyes, making them appear larger and more defined. She explains that the ideal for beauty is a dark, strong eyebrow. She even shows you how to use the coal to darken your own brows, and mentions that some of the most beautiful women connect them in the middle. The unibrow, a feature you might have once tried to hide, is now a potential fashion statement, proof that strange trends are nothing new. As she works, the Vilica dispenses cynical wisdom that gets to the heart of a scholarly debate. "Listen to me," she says, forcing you to meet her gaze in the bronze mirror. "The poets, the philosophers, the respectable men who will be your clients. They will write endlessly about the virtues of a simple, natural woman. They will criticize makeup as a trick, a lie." She pauses, her lip curling into a sneer. Historians still argue about how Roman men truly perceived a painted face if they found it sophisticated or deceitful. But I will tell you the truth of it. Men praise simplicity, but they pay for illusion. They desire the fantasy. Your job is not to be a natural woman. Your job is to be the most beautiful lie they have ever seen. Her advice is a crude summary of what the poet Ovid wrote in his Ars Amatoria. It's a mainstream historical fact that he and others gave detailed advice to women on how to use cosmetics to attract men. The pursuit of artificial beauty was a well-documented part of Roman life. The Vilica is simply teaching you the street-level survivalist version of his elegant poetry. The lesson moves on to scent. In a world without modern sanitation, perfume was not a luxury, it was a necessity. She opens a small alabaster jar and a heavy, sweet scent fills the room. It's an unguentum, a thick, oil-based perfume made from thousands of crushed rose petals. She shows you how to apply it to your neck, your wrists, your hair. It is so strong it's almost suffocating, designed to overpower any other odor and to linger for hours. But the final, most important piece of your transformation is the hair. Intricate hairstyles were a sign of wealth and leisure, as they took hours for a slave to create. but the true mark of exotic beauty was color. The Villica produces the Leno's greatest investment in you yet, a wig. It is a full heavy wig of cascading blonde curls. This is the quirky and rather grim tidbit of Roman fashion. Blonde and red hair were the most sought-after colors for wigs prized for their rarity, and the primary source for this hair was the empire's frontiers. They were sheared from the heads of captured Germanic and Gallic women, spoils of war, to be sold in the marketplaces of Rome. The ultimate fashion accessory, the key to transforming you into an object of exotic desire, was harvested from the despair of another woman, a captive of the same empire that now holds you. The Villica fits the wig, a capillamentum, over your own tightly bound hair. It is heavy and hot. She then drapes a new garment over your shoulders. It is not the coarse, shameful toga. It is a stola made of fine, near-translucent silk, from the east dyed a brilliant sapphire blue. This is a coen vestis, a garment so sheer it was scandalous, a dress meant to both conceal and reveal, a garment explicitly associated with high-class courtesans. When she is finished, she holds up the bronze mirror. The reflection is terrifying. The person staring back at you is a stranger. A perfect, silent, beautiful creature with snow-white skin, crimson lips, and a cascade of golden hair that belongs to someone else. The face is a flawless mask, the body draped in a whisper of silk. It is not you. It is a product meticulously assembled from lead-crushed rock flower petals and the hair of a barbarian captive. It is an illusion designed to command the highest possible price. You feel a profound sense of detachment, as if your true self is now buried layers deep beneath this expensive, poisonous artifice. You are ready for a new market. Your transformation is complete. When Marcus, your owner, sees you in your full artificial splendor, the blonde wig, the silk dress, the flawless painted face, he doesn't offer a word of praise for your beauty. He simply gives a slow, satisfied nod. It's the nod of a craftsman who has just perfected his product, or a merchant calculating his future profits. In his eyes, you see no appreciation, only appraisal. And in that moment, your understanding of this man, the absolute master of your world, begins to deepen. You move beyond simple fear and start to comprehend the brutal mechanics of his control. He is a Leno. In the rigidly stratified society of Rome, this is one of the foulest words you can call a man. It means pimp, procurer, trafficker. It is a title of utter contempt. This is the primary mainstream fact of his existence. A Leno occupied the lowest possible rung of the social ladder, right down there with gravediggers and executioners. Writers like Cicero spoke of them as a moral plague. Legally, just like you, he is branded with infamia. He cannot vote, hold office, or testify in court. He is a pariah. The senators and merchants who use his services would spit on him in the street. His power exists only within the walls of his sordid businesses. Out there, he is nothing. This shared status as an outcast doesn't create a bond between you. It explains the desperation behind his cruelty. He is a king in a kingdom of filth, and he will do anything to maintain his throne. His control over you and the other women is a masterclass in tyranny built on 4 unbreachable walls. The first is economic. You are kept in a state of perpetual poverty and dependence. You see the coins, you might even hold them for a moment, but they are never yours. He collects every last as. In return, he provides a roof, a daily ration of food, and the tools of your trade. You have nothing, and so you can do nothing. The idea of saving up to buy your freedom is a laughable fantasy. You have no access to the very currency that would make it possible. He operates on a carrot and stick principle, except the carrot is usually just a slightly less stale piece of bread after an exceptionally profitable night, and the stick is always within reach. The second wall is psychological. Marcus is a student of fear and manipulation. He never allows solidarity to form between the women. He fosters an atmosphere of quiet, simmering competition. If one woman has a particularly successful week, she might receive a slightly better meal, a small gesture that breeds jealousy and resentment among the others. He keeps you off balance with his moods. One day he might be silent and brooding, the next volatile and angry. This unpredictability is a powerful tool. It makes you constantly anxious, always trying to anticipate his reactions, focusing all your mental energy on him rather than on your own condition. The third wall is physical. While he may not be violent every day, the threat is a constant humming presence in the air. You've seen it. A few weeks ago, one of the other women, Lyra, was caught hiding a single copper coin. Marcus didn't shout. He calmly dragged her into the courtyard, and while he didn't use a whip, he backhanded her across the face with such force that she fell to the ground, her lips split open. He left her there for an hour. The lesson was for everyone. We all saw the blood on the stones. We all understood. The doors of the lupanar are barred at night. You are his prisoners. He owns your bodies not just in practice but in Roman law. And that is the fourth and final wall, the law itself. As a slave and a person of infamia, you have no rights he is bound to respect. The legal system that protects a citizen is the same system that classifies you as property. He could beat you, starve you, or sell you on a whim, and no magistrate would intervene unless he was damaging his own financial asset too severely. He is the law in this place. As you watch him more closely, you start to see the man behind the monster. You notice the thick, ropey scar tissue on his knuckles and a badly healed break in the line of his nose. This brings a quirky, complex detail into focus. Many Leonese were not born into the trade. They were often ex-slaves, former soldiers, or even failed gladiators, men who had survived brutal lives and found that this was one of the few businesses open to a man with a violent past, no social standing, and a desperate need to make money. He is a product of the same merciless system he now expertly manipulates. You look at the scar above his eye and wonder if he learned his particular style of management in a military barracks or a gladiatorial school. This realization feeds into a broader scholarly debate. Roman comedies like those by the playwright Plautus are filled with stock characters of the Leno, and they are always portrayed as greedy, cowardly, and cartoonishly evil thugs. But historians still argue about how accurate this stereotype was. Were they all just brutish monsters? Or were some like Marcus more akin to cunning and ruthless businessmen managing their assets with cold, calculated logic rather than pure sadism? You conclude that Marcus is both. He has the capacity for a thug's violence, but he uses it sparingly, like a tool. His primary driver is profit. You overhear him one evening arguing with the vicar about the rising cost of oil for the lamps. His voice filled with the same frustrated anxiety as any other small business owner. If Chief Operating Officer of Human Misery were a formal title, he would excel at the job. You no longer see him as just a source of random cruelty. You see him as a desperate man clinging to a precarious perch at the bottom of the world. His survival depends on his ability to control and profit from yours. This understanding doesn't lessen your fear. In fact, it sharpens it. You are not dealing with a simple monster. You are dealing with a professional, a man whose entire existence is dedicated to the business of owning you. Your new, carefully constructed appearance is an effective lure. The investment pays off, and the clientele who now stop at your cell door, or for whom you are specifically booked for private encounters, begins to diversify. You are no longer dealing only with the desperate, anonymous drunks and dock workers of the Subura. You are now a student of a much wider cross-section of Roman manhood, and you learn out of necessity to become a keen observer. You analyze their motivations, their expectations, and the specific dangers each one carries. It is a grim sort of anthropology conducted as a matter of survival. First, there is the soldier. He is often young, wiry, and strong, his face browned by the sun of some distant province. He smells of leather and nervous sweat. He may not have seen his home in years, and his visits to the lupanar are fueled by a potent combination of loneliness and a long-suppressed need for human contact. He is usually not a man of many words. He has two conversational modes, silence and shouting, and he's not much for small talk either way. The danger with him is his bluntness. He sees the world in terms of conquest and submission, and he can be rough treating the transaction with the same lack of ceremony as storming a barricade. Your job is to be yielding to absorb his desperate energy without provoking the violence that is never far from the surface of a man trained to kill. Then there is the merchant. He is typically older, softer. His hands clean his tunic well made. He sees you not as a partner in a human act, but as a luxury good he has temporarily leased. He will inspect you with the same critical eye he uses for a shipment of Spanish olive oil or a bolt of Egyptian linen. You half expect him to haggle or ask for a discount if he finds a flaw. With him, the danger is not physical, but psychological. He wants his money's worth, and this often translates into a series of specific demeaning demands. He is buying a moment of absolute control, a brief escape from a life where he is beholden to shipping schedules, market prices, and a respectable, watchful wife. He needs to feel like the master of something, and for this hour that something is you. You learn that for these men this is all perfectly normal. It's a foundational mainstream fact of Roman life that a respectable man was expected to maintain a chaste household with his wife, the mother of his legitimate children, while seeking physical release elsewhere. His virility and social dominance were affirmed by his sexual access to those of lower status slaves, foreigners, and prostitutes. As long as he was the active dominant partner, and his activities didn't bring public scandal upon his family, society didn't just tolerate his behavior, it implicitly encouraged it. You are not a temptation he succumbs to. You are a social pressure valve, a necessary part of the city's machinery. Occasionally you encounter the poet. He is young, intense, and his eyes are filled with a tragic, self-serving romanticism. He doesn't just want your body, he wants your story. He wants to write a tragic ode to your fallen beauty, and the sorrow he imagines is hidden in your eyes. He brings you a wilting flower or a poorly written poem. The danger he presents is subtle. He is trying to project a grand emotional narrative onto a brutal commercial transaction. He might become possessive, jealous, or simply refuse to leave convinced of a special connection that exists only in his head. You learn to perform a kind of gentle, sorrowful beauty for him, a role that is both absurd and deeply exhausting. And of course there is the politician, the wealthy, powerful man from the upper echelons. Encounters with him are rare and lucrative for your owner. They happen away from the lupanar in private inns or discreet villas. With him the performance is total. You must be the witty, charming companion, the beautiful adornment, the intelligent listener, and the skilled physical partner. The danger here is the immense power imbalance. His entire career is built on his public reputation, his dignitas. Your very existence is a threat to that. If he feels for a moment that you could expose him, that you hold any power over him, he could have you disposed of with a quiet word and a bag of coins. With him, You must be a perfect, beautiful, and utterly forgettable ghost. Across all these types, you begin to notice strange remnants of their superstitions. One morning, cleaning your cell, you find a small bent iron nail tucked under your mattress. Another time, it's a tiny lead tablet no bigger than your thumb with unreadable scratches on it. The villager tells you these are charms, or even curses. This is a quirky fringe detail of the trade clients might use folk magic to try and ensure your affection, or to bind you to them, a desperate, superstitious attempt to claim ownership beyond the few minutes they paid for. It's a chilling reminder that their desire for control can bleed into the realm of the supernatural. You also observe that the spectrum of desire is broad. Historians still argue about the precise role of same-sex encounters in Roman brothels, but from your vantage point, the answer is simple. It was a service with a price. Roman morality was not concerned with the gender of a sexual partner, but with the status and the role. A freeborn Roman man was expected to be the dominant active partner. As long as he maintained that role, his choice of a male or female slave was of little consequence. You sometimes see a wealthy man discreetly arrange for time with one of the young male slaves who works at the lupanar, and to Marcus, it's all the same. A transaction is a transaction. Ultimately, you learn that despite the vast differences in their clothes, their manners, and their methods, all these men are buying the same thing. They are buying a moment of escape and a feeling of power. You are the canvas onto which they project their loneliness, their ambition, their frustrations, and their fantasies. Your survival depends on your ability to read which fantasy is required and to perform it flawlessly, erasing yourself in the process.
You learn to read the seasons of the city not by the weather, but by the rhythm of the business. There are slow weeks, steady weeks, and then there are the festivals. You sense one coming long before the first official procession. A new kind of energy crackles in the air, a frantic, gleeful hum that seeps through the walls of the lupanar. Marcus and the villager are in a constant state of preparation, haggling with merchants for extra amphorae of wine, more oil for the lamps, and stockpiling cheap food. For the citizens of Rome, the coming holiday is a time of release and reverence. For your owner, it is peak season. For you, it is a coming storm. The festival is Saturnalia. It is the most beloved of all Roman holidays, a week in the heart of winter dedicated to the god Saturn. It's a time when the entire city turns upside down. This is the central mainstream fact of the celebration. It was a festival of role reversal. For a few wild, joyful days, the normal, rigid hierarchies of Roman society were inverted. Gambling, normally forbidden, was allowed in the streets. Schools and businesses closed, and most famously, masters would host lavish feasts for their slaves, sometimes even serving them their meals. It was a time of gift-giving, of feasting, of drunken chaos, all under the benevolent guise of honoring a golden age of equality under Saturn. This concept of role reversal is the cruelest joke you have ever heard. While the cook and the stable hand in the villa down the street might be donning their master's cap and drinking his best wine, your servitude is about to intensify tenfold. The one time of year when some slaves get a taste of freedom is the one time of year your chains are pulled tightest. The lupanar does not close. It goes into overdrive. The whole city is getting ready for a week of chaotic fun. You are getting ready for a normal Tuesday, but on fire, and with more shouting. The first day of Saturnalia arrives, and the storm breaks. The roar from the streets is a constant deafening wave of sound, shouting, singing the rattle of dice.
and the clients begin to pour in, not in a steady stream, but in a flood. They are men who on any other day might be sober and reserved, but are now flushed with wine and holiday spirit. All the careful analysis you've made of your clientele becomes useless. The soldier is drunker and more prone to violence. The merchant is louder and more demanding, his usual businesslike manner dissolved in cheap wine. The poet is insufferably sentimental, weeping about the brotherhood of man one minute and trying to grope you the next. The thin veneer of Roman gravity has been completely stripped away, revealing the raw, impulsive desires underneath. The Vilica abandons any pretense of shifts. You are all on duty all the time. You are pulled from one client to the next with barely a moment to breathe or splash water on your face. The air grows thick with the smell of spilled wine, sweat, and burning oil. The noise inside the brothel merges with the noise from the street until it is one inescapable, pulsating roar. Your body aches, your head pounds, and you retreat further and further into that quiet, numb place inside yourself. Survival is the only goal. On the third day of the festival, Marcus gathers all of you in the main hall. He is drunk a rare sight, and a wide, unsettling grin is plastered on his face. He holds up a wine cup. In the spirit of this blessed holiday, he slurs, it is traditional for a household to choose a king of the Saturnalia, a lord of misrule. He gestures grandly around the filthy, crowded room. And I, your benevolent master, declare myself your king. This is a quirky, perverse twist on the holiday tradition. The Saturnalicious princeps was a real custom, a mock king chosen to preside over the household's festivities. But here Marcus uses it not to invert power, but to mock your powerlessness. He is the king of the revels, and his only decree is that the work continues faster and harder. It's a bit on the nose, like a wolf crowning himself king of the sheepfold. Exhausted standing in your cell during a brief lull, you wonder about the purpose of it all. Why does a society built on such rigid control allow and even encourage this week of absolute chaos? Historians still argue about the true social function of festivals like Saturnalia. Was it a genuine safety valve, a carefully managed explosion that allowed the oppressed classes to vent their frustrations, making them more docile for the rest of the year and thus strengthening the system? Or was it something more dangerous, a moment where the world truly was turned upside down and the seeds of real rebellion could be sown? From your vantage point, the answer is painfully clear. This is no rebellion. This is licensed chaos. It reinforces the rules by briefly suspending them. When the last day of the festival is over, the city will wake up with a collective hangover and the natural order will be restored. Masters will be masters again, and you will still be a slave, only now you'll be nursing bruises you don't remember getting. The week blurs into a single nightmarish marathon of noise bodies and exhaustion. You lose track of time. You eat scraps of bread while standing. You sleep in snatches of an hour or two, only to be shaken awake by the Vilica because another client is waiting. By the final day, you are moving like an automaton, your painted smile a rictus of pure fatigue. Then, as suddenly as it began, it's over. The morning dawns on a city that is quiet, subdued, and littered with the debris of its own revelry. The streets are sticky with wine and strewn with discarded wreaths. The city collectively groans, nursing its headache and its shame. Inside the lupanar, the silence is the most beautiful sound you have ever heard. The clients are gone. Marcus is in his room counting a truly staggering pile of coins. You and the other women are given the morning to sleep, and then the real work begins, cleaning up the filth of a week-long party you were not allowed to attend. As you scrub a wine stain from the floor, you know the truth of Saturnalia. It changes nothing. It is just another part of the machine, a chaotic, violent, and immensely profitable season in the endless business of desire. In the exhausted, hollowed-out days that follow Saturnalia, a strange quiet settles over the lupanar. Business is slow as the city recovers from its collective indulgence. For the first time in what feels like an eternity, there are long, empty hours. In this quiet, the questions you normally keep buried under a mountain of work begin to surface.
Stripped of its frantic commerce, what is left in this place? Is there any room for genuine human connection? Can anything like affection or even simple kindness survive in a world where every touch has a price? You look for it first among the other women. The Lenormachus does everything in his power to prevent any real bonds from forming, seeing solidarity as a direct threat to his control. And yet you see small flickering moments of it. You see it when Lyra, without a word, presses a small piece of her own bread into the hand of a new girl who has been weeping silently in the corner. You feel it when Chloe, after you've dealt with a particularly rough client, meets your eye across the hall with a look of grim, shared understanding. It's not friendship, not a sisterhood. It's not a book club. It's the unspoken camaraderie of soldiers in a trench. A shared glance that says, "I see you and I know this is impossible," is sometimes all the solidarity you can get. These moments are brief, dangerous, and fiercely precious. Then you start to notice it from a client. He is not one of the high-paying politicians or the dramatic poets. He is a stonemason, a regular who comes once a week. His hands are calloused and dusty, but his touch is gentle. He never haggles. He speaks to you quietly, asking simple questions about the weather. He never stays long. He pays his 2 asses and leaves with a soft, "Be well." In the brutal ecosystem of the brothel, this small decency feels like a radical act of kindness. He's gentle, and he doesn't treat you like an object. By the standards of this place, he's basically a knight in shining armor, even if the armor is a bit dusty and smells of limestone. But the question always follows him out the door. Is it real? Is he a genuinely kind man in a cruel world? Or is his kindness just a more refined and perhaps more selfish form of consumption? Is he buying the feeling of being a good person, a brief respite from the harshness of his own life? One afternoon, while cleaning your cell, you see something new on the wall. Scratched into the plaster with a nail is a fresh piece of graffiti. It's your working name, Felicitas, enclosed within a crudely drawn heart. Next to it is a man's name, Gaius. It's the stonemason. You stare at it, your own heart a cold, tight knot in your chest. This is a well-documented phenomenon, a mainstream fact discovered on the excavated walls of Pompeii. The brothels and taverns are filled with these desperate little messages, declarations of love and longing, scrawled for all to see. "Successus the weaver loves Iris," one famous example reads. Another simply has 2 names linked forever in plaster. It's the ancient world's version of a social media relationship update, but with more desperation and a much higher chance of being tragically one-sided. Looking at the name on your wall, you are forced to confront the central scholarly debate about these very inscriptions. Historians still argue about how to interpret this emotional language. When a man like Gaius scratches your name in a heart, what does he mean by love? Is it the deep, selfless affection we associate with the word today? Or is it amor, the Roman concept of intense, often painful and selfish desire? Is he declaring his affection for you, the person? Or is he simply marking his territory, publicly claiming his favorite purchase? The line between love and ownership is terrifyingly thin. You start to see this obsessive desire in others too. You think of the young poet, and you realize his behavior mirrors what Roman physicians wrote about.
It's a quirky, fascinating tidbit that they treated extreme infatuation or amor insanus as a literal physical illness. Doctors like Galen described lovesickness as a malady with symptoms like a racing pulse fever and melancholy. Some clients weren't just lonely, they were clinically obsessed, their longing a genuine sickness of the mind. You wonder if there was a prescription for it, like, take 2 passages of Stoic philosophy and call me in the morning. It reframes their actions not as romantic, but as pathological. Is Gaius's kindness a symptom of health or of this same disease in a milder form? He returns a few days later. He is the same as always, quiet, gentle, respectful. He doesn't mention the graffiti, and neither do you. But now his kindness feels heavier, more complicated. It feels like a question you're afraid to answer. If you allow yourself to believe it's real, to feel a flicker of warmth or connection in return, what happens when he doesn't come back? What happens when he finds another favorite? More importantly, what happens if Marcus notices? Your owner profits from your body, but a client having a claim on your affection is a threat to his business model. An attachment would be a weakness he could exploit, a lever he could use against you both. You lie on your stone bed that night, long after the stonemason has gone, and you trace the outline of the heart on the wall with your finger. The question remains, can love exist here? Perhaps. Perhaps in fleeting glances, in shared bread, in gentle hands, in hopeful, desperate graffiti. But you realize that even if it can, you cannot afford to accept it. The emotional numbness you have cultivated is not a prison, it is a shield. To feel hope, to feel affection, would be to lower that shield, leaving you vulnerable to a kind of pain far worse than any physical blow. In the business of desire, love is not a salvation. It is a fatal liability. The fragile question of love, scratched onto your wall, is quickly buried by a much more immediate and brutal reality. The physical body, which you have learned to disconnect from, to treat as a shell, suddenly reasserts its importance in the most terrifying way, through sickness. It begins with Chloe, one of the quieter women. One morning she doesn't rise for the daily chores. The Vilica finds her shivering with fever on her palate, her skin unnaturally pale save for 2 flushed spots high on her cheeks. The diagnosis from the Vilica is swift and unscientific, a bad humor brought on by the damp winter air. In a world without an understanding of germs, illness is a mysterious and malevolent force, a punishment from the gods, or a result of some invisible imbalance. The reaction in the lupanar is a mix of hushed pity and sharp metallic fear. Pity for Chloe and fear for yourselves. Sickness is a contagion of both body and business. If one woman falls ill, others might follow. And an illness for any of you is a professional death sentence. You are your bodies. That is the entirety of your value to Marcus. A sick woman is a broken tool, a lame horse. She cannot earn. She is a liability. Marcus's reaction confirms this. When the Vilica informs him, his face contorts not with sympathy, but with rage. It is the anger of a merchant whose prize amphora has cracked, whose cargo has spoiled. He storms into Chloe's cell, looks at her shivering form for a moment, and spits a curse on the floor. "Fix her," he snarls at the Vilica, "or get rid of her." His healthcare plan is brutally simple. If you're sick, you're effectively fired, or in your case, sold for scrap. The fear of disease is constant. You all know the risks. While Roman physicians didn't have the language of viruses or bacteria, their medical texts from Hippocrates to Celsus are filled with descriptions of ailments that are unmistakably sexually transmitted. It's a mainstream historical fact that they documented all manner of genital sores, painful discharges, and mysterious fevers associated with the trade. You have all seen women in the Subura with the telltale signs of chronic illness, their beauty ravaged, their bodies wasted. You know that every transaction, every anonymous encounter is a roll of the dice. The Vilica, now acting as a reluctant physician, sets about trying to fix Chloe. The remedies she employs are a terrifying catalogue of folk magic and medical guesswork drawn from sources like Pliny the Elder's Encyclopedia of the Natural World. This is where you confront the quirky and often disgusting reality of ancient medicine. The cure for Chloe's fever, it is decided, is a fumigation. She is forced to sit over a smouldering brazier of coals onto which the Vilica throws a noxious mixture of dried herb sulfur and goat hair. The acrid smoke is meant to drive the sickness from her body. It only leaves her coughing and gasping for air in her already weakened state. You hear whispers of other cures for women's ailments, things like weasel testicles worn as an amulet, or most famously pessaries made from crocodile dung. The thought makes you shudder. You almost prefer the disease to the cure. Beyond the invisible threat of sickness is the constant visible threat of injury. A client made rough by wine or a bad day might leave you with a bruised arm or a split lip. These you learn to cover with your lead makeup, hiding the evidence of the job's violence. But a more serious injury, a broken bone or a deep cut, would be a disaster. And then there is the most persistent fear of all, a fear that shadows every single working day pregnancy.
For a respectable Roman wife, pregnancy is a duty and a blessing. For you, it is a catastrophe. It means the end of your ability to earn, and it makes you a useless burden to your owner. The Romans did have methods of contraception, but their effectiveness is the subject of intense scholarly debate. The Vilica has given all of you the standard advice: use pessaries of wool soaked in olive oil or vinegar. Drink concoctions of bitter herbs after every encounter. She might even tell you the tale of silphium, a plant from North Africa, so famously effective as a contraceptive that it was literally harvested to extinction, a ringing endorsement for the product, but a poor lesson in sustainable agriculture. You know from the hushed, terrified conversations you've overheard that these methods fail, and they fail often. When they do, the only recourse is a desperate attempt at abortion using dangerous herbs that could poison you, or the services of a back alley practitioner with crude, life-threatening instruments. Chloe does not get better. After 3 days of the Vilica's foul-smelling cures, she is weaker than ever. One morning you wake up and she is gone. Her cell is empty, her meager belongings vanished. No one says a word. Marcus is in a foul mood for a week, but the subject of Chloe is never raised. Did she die in the night? Was she sold to a mine owner for a few coins where she would work until she dropped? Was she simply carried out and left in an alley to die? You never find out. Her sudden silent disappearance is a more effective warning than any beating. You are all replaceable. The ghost of Chloe haunts the lupanar. You find yourself obsessively, superstitiously washing using the limited water you have. You scrutinize your own body in the dim light of your bronze mirror, searching for any sign, any spot, any hint of the decay that could claim you next. You finally and fully understand that your most dangerous enemy is not a violent client or a cruel master. It is your own fragile, vulnerable, and ultimately mortal body. In this world, health is not a right. It is a temporary stroke of luck, and you know with a cold, sinking certainty that your luck cannot last forever. Chloe's disappearance leaves a vacuum in the lupanar, a cold spot of fear that everyone feels. In a world where medicine is useless and the law is your enemy,
where your own body can betray you at any moment, you realize there is nowhere left to turn. And so, like countless desperate people before you, you turn to the gods. When human systems fail, the supernatural is all that remains. Religion in the brothel is not a matter of grand ceremony or deep theological debate. It is a raw, practical, and desperate tool for survival. In a smoky, forgotten corner of the main hall sits a small shrine, a lararium. It is grimy with soot from the oil lamps, but it is the spiritual heart of the establishment. The central figure is a small, cheap terracotta statue of Venus. This is a mainstream historical fact. Venus, the goddess of love, beauty and desire, was the natural patroness of your trade. The city of Pompeii, famous for its vibrant sex trade, even had Venus as its official patron deity. But your relationship with her is complicated. You're essentially praying to the goddess of love for protection from the consequences of loveless sex. Roman theology is full of these little ironies. The prayers offered to this statue are not for romance. They are brutally pragmatic. Lyra leaves a single wilting flower at its base, praying that her looks, which are just beginning to fade, will last another year. A new girl, terrified and far from home, offers a tearful, silent plea for a client who is not cruel. You are praying to Venus not as a goddess of the heart, but as the divine CEO of your industry, asking for favorable market conditions and a safe working environment. Next to Venus on the shrine is a smaller, cruder figure, one you see all over the city, especially in gardens and doorways. It is Priapus, a minor god of fertility, instantly recognizable by his enormous, perpetually erect phallus. He's not the most subtle of gods, but in a world that is all about blunt force and crude transactions, perhaps his direct aggressive energy is seen as a potent form of protection. He is there to ward off the evil eye, to bring good fortune, which in this context means plentiful clients, and to guard the threshold against bad luck. His presence is a blunt acknowledgement of the raw, non-romantic nature of the business. But the official gods of Rome, with their grand temples and their focus on the prosperity of the state, often feel distant and transactional. This leads to a debate that historians still ponder. What was the true nature of personal Roman religion? Did the average person, especially a slave or a foreigner, place their genuine faith in the state gods, or did they turn to more personal, local, or imported deities? Was worship a matter of sincere belief, or was it a superstitious bartering system, an offering for a result like putting a coin into a divine vending machine? Here in the Lupanar, you see both. One night, long after the last client has gone, you see one of the other women, a quiet girl from Alexandria, slip away from the main shrine. You follow her gaze and see her pull a small hidden object from a crack in the wall. It is a small amulet of a goddess you recognize from the foreign quarters of the city Isis. This is a quirky yet profoundly important detail of Roman spiritual life. The cult of the Egyptian goddess Isis was wildly popular, especially with women slaves and freedmen. Unlike the often amoral Roman gods, Isis was portrayed as a compassionate maternal figure who had known great suffering herself. She was a goddess of mercy who promised not just aid in this life, but also the hope of a blessed afterlife. When the official gods seem more concerned with military victories than your personal survival, it makes sense to shop around for a deity from out of town. Isis. It seems offers a much better benefits package. The Alexandrian girl whispers her prayers to this foreign goddess, her face streaked with tears, and you know she is not praying for more customers. She is praying for salvation. Watching her, you feel a sudden sharp need to do the same, to perform some small act of hope. You approach the grimy shrine to Venus. You have no proper offering, no incense or carved figurine. You take the small bronze Spintria token from Section 2, the one with the numeral 16 on it, that your owner once gave you as a reminder. You had hidden it away. It feels like a fitting sacrifice. It is a symbol of your trade of the highest price your body can command. You place the cold, heavy token at the statue's feet. You close your eyes and you pray. You do not pray for freedom. The idea is so vast and impossible, it feels like a lie. You do not pray for love. The graffiti on your wall feels more like a threat than a promise. Your prayer is small, specific, and desperate. You pray for your health to hold. You pray for the bleeding on Lyra's lip to heal quickly. You pray for the new girl to find the strength to stop crying. You pray for a night without violence, a week without sickness, a month without despair. You pray for the strength to build your shield of numbness a little thicker to endure what cannot be changed. When you open your eyes, nothing has changed. The room is still cold, the air is still stale, and Marcus is still asleep in his room dreaming of coins. The token still sits at the feet of the indifferent goddess. But the act of prayer, of giving voice to your fear and your fragile hope, has subtly shifted something inside you. It is a small rebellion of the soul, a declaration that even here in the absolute depths, there is a part of you that still believes in something beyond the next transaction. It is a whisper against the roar of the machine, and for tonight, that whisper is enough. Your whispered prayer at the shrine hangs in the stale air of the lupanar, a fragile seed of hope in barren ground. It is this seed, this tiny, irrational belief in something better, that allows you to even contemplate the most impossible idea, freedom. The concept is so abstract, so distant, it feels like a myth. But one evening, as you are helping Lyra mend a torn tunic, she speaks of it as a real thing. She tells you a story in a low, hushed voice of a woman she knew years ago in another brothel who was granted her manumission. She was freed. The word itself sounds foreign, magical. Manumission. The freeing of a slave was a mainstream historical fact of Roman life, far more common than in other ancient slave societies. The city was full of liberty and liberti freedmen and freedwomen who ran shops, worked as craftsmen, and became a vital part of the urban economy. But hearing about it and imagining it for yourself are two very different things. Lyra explains the paths. The first, she says, is to buy your own freedom. A slave was sometimes allowed to earn and keep their own money in a fund called a peculium. The idea of you having a peculium is so absurd, it's almost funny. Your owner's accounting system is brutally simple. 100% of all income flows directly into his purse. There is no possibility of a personal savings plan. This path is a wall solid and insurmountable. The other paths are dependent not on your own efforts, but on the whim of your owner. A master might free a slave in their will as a final act of gratitude or piety. This thought sends a cold shiver through you. It means your greatest hope for freedom is for Marcus to die. It is a grim retirement plan, but it is the only one on offer. Or an owner might free an older slave after decades of loyal service once her prime earning years are past. It is less an act of mercy and more a cold financial calculation, a way to avoid the cost of caring for an aging, unprofitable asset. But the story Lyra tells, the one that lodges in your mind, is the third path. The woman she knew was bought and freed by a wealthy client who had become her regular patron. He purchased her from the Leno, and in a formal ceremony before a magistrate declared her a free woman. This is the fantasy, the happy ending of all the stories. Your mind immediately flashes to the graffiti on your wall, to the stonemason Gaius and his quiet kindness. You allow yourself for a dangerous, intoxicating moment to imagine it. For him to save his earnings, to walk in one day and buy you, to lead you out of this place forever. This tiny, flickering hope is precisely what feeds a larger scholarly debate. Historians still argue about the motivations behind Rome's high rates of manumission. Was it a calculated system to ensure slaves remained docile and productive, fueled by a hope, however slim, of eventual freedom? Was it purely economic, a way for masters to cash out on an asset? Or was it in some cases driven by genuine human affection and a desire to elevate a beloved slave to a new status? Was the patron in Lyra's story motivated by love, or was it simply the ultimate act of acquisition? Then Lyra, with the weary pragmatism of a woman who has seen too much, begins to explain what happened after the woman was freed, and the beautiful fantasy in your head begins to crumble. Freedom, you learn, is not a clean break. A freed slave, a liberator, still owed lifelong duties and deference to her former master, who was now her patron, her patroness. This bond, called obsequium, was legally enforceable. The woman Lyra knew was set up in her own small apartment by her patron, but she was still expected to be available to him to manage his social affairs. And her former Lino, now also technically her patron, could still legally demand a portion of any money she earned. Congratulations, you're free, but you are still bound by a web of obligations to the very men who once owned you. You just have the illusion of choice now. One day, on a trip to the market, you see it for yourself. A small procession is leaving a magistrate's office. A man, his head freshly shaved, is being clapped on the back by his friends. On his head, he wears a conical grey felt cap. It is a pileus, the quirky, tangible symbol of a freed slave. He has just been manumitted. He looks dazed, overwhelmed, and incredibly happy. For a moment your heart soars for him, but then you see his former master, his new patron, place a heavy proprietary hand on his shoulder, guiding him away. The man's freedom is already being managed. The funny hat signifies a new legal status, but one that exists in a grey area somewhere between property and person. It is a promotion, technically, but to what? You begin to imagine your own happy ending more realistically. If Gaius did buy your freedom, what would your life be? You would be his freedwoman. Perhaps he would set you up as his concubine, a position with no legal standing, entirely dependent on his continued affection. You would be free from the lupanar, but you would still be defined by your relationship to a man. And the stigma of your past of having been a prostitute would cling to you forever. You would be a liberator, but you would never be a respectable lady. Or what if you were simply freed by Marcus in his old age? What would you do with no money and no skills beyond the ones you learned in the brothel? You might have no choice but to open a small, struggling tavern, or even end up working for Marcus as a paid supervisor, becoming the next Vilica. The hope of freedom, you realize, is a double-edged sword. It is the only thing that makes enduring this life possible. But the reality of that freedom is so compromised, so laden with the chains of the past, that it hardly seems like freedom at all. It is just a different kind of cage, one with a slightly longer leash and a view of the sky. The flicker of hope remains, but now it is tempered by a cold, hard dose of reality. The fragile hope of manumission of a future life governed by law and personal choice is a beautiful, distant fantasy. The reality of the law as you experience it day to day is something else entirely. It is not a shield that protects you. It is a shadow that you live under, a shadow that offers no comfort and conceals a world of violence where you have no recourse. This lesson is driven home one night with the kind of brutal clarity that leaves no room for illusion. It starts with a merchant, a man you recognize as a regular. Tonight, however, He is not his usual smug, calculating self. He is drunk, his face flushed, and his eyes hold the wild, angry look of a man who has lost a great deal of money at a dice game. He stumbles into the main hall, shouting for more wine. The woman whose turn it is, a fiery girl from Spain named Delia, tries to handle him. She uses the practiced placating tone you all have learned, but the man is beyond reason. He grabs her arm, she tries to pull away, and in a flash of drunken rage he strikes her. He doesn't just slap her, he throws her against the wall. The sound of her head hitting the plaster is a sickening thud that cuts through all the noise in the room. For a moment, there is a dead silence. The merchant stares, his fury momentarily replaced by shock. Then Marcus and his heavy-handed assistant are there. They haul the man out into the street, not with the intention of handing him over to the authorities, but simply to get him out of the establishment. Delia is on the floor, dazed and bleeding from a cut on her temple. The other women rush to her side. The idea of calling for the vigils the city watch is so completely absurd that it doesn't even cross anyone's mind. This is the grim, mainstream historical fact that governs your life, a direct consequence of your legal status. As a slave, branded with infamia, you are a non-person in the eyes of the law when it comes to assault. The crime the merchant committed was not against Delia the human being. The crime was against Marcus's property. You could not walk to a magistrate and accuse a citizen of assault any more than a tavern stool could complain that it had been kicked. The law is not for you. It is a system designed by property owners to protect property, and you are the property. Marcus's reaction is a perfect illustration of this principle. He rushes over to where Delia is being helped to her feet. He doesn't ask if she is okay. He examines the cut on her head with a critical eye, his expression a mixture of fury and cold financial calculation. "His name," he growls, looking at the Villica. "I know him, a wool merchant from the Emporium." For a moment you think he might seek his own form of justice. If the client had been a poor soldier or a nameless thug, Marcus would have sent his enforcer to find him in an alley and break his legs as a warning. But a wealthy merchant is a different matter. Marcus is a pariah. The merchant is a man of some standing. Marcus cannot risk a war with a man who has more money and more connections than he does. He has to swallow the loss. His power has its limits, and you have all just seen them. In this moment, the law's true perverse nature becomes clear. You learn about a quirky fringe aspect of Roman commerce formal contracts for the lease of slaves, including for prostitution. If Delia had been leased to the merchant under such a contract, Marcus could have potentially sued him in court for damaging the merchandise and breaching the terms. The case would not be Marcus v. the merchant for the assault of Delia. It would be a commercial dispute like suing over a lame mule or a cracked shipment of pottery. Because there was no formal contract, Marcus has no legal move. He can only curse his bad luck and the cost of the damages. This incident rips away any lingering sense of security. You realize you are protected only to the extent that you are a valuable asset, and that protection vanishes the moment a more powerful asset, a wealthier client, is involved. This internal vulnerability is mirrored by the external dangers of the city. The Subura is a violent place. Brawls are a nightly occurrence. Robbery is rampant. This brings a scholarly debate into sharp focus. Historians still argue about the true effectiveness of the Roman vigiles. Were they a genuine police force patrolling the streets and keeping the peace? Or were they, as the evidence seems to suggest for the city's poorer districts, little more than a fire brigade and a patrol for escaped slaves? From where you stand, the debate is settled. The law and its enforcers are for the people on the sunlit hills of Rome. Down here in the shadows, you are on your own. Delia is unable to work for over a week. The cut on her temple becomes infected and she suffers from a fever. The villager patches her up with cobwebs and wine, but her value in Marcus's eyes has plummeted. She is damaged goods. She recovers, but with a pale, jagged scar that she tries to hide with her hair. She is a living, breathing reminder of the violence that underpins your entire existence. You now understand that the law is not an abstract concept of justice. It is a weapon wielded by the powerful against the weak. Your only shield is the financial interest of your owner, and that is as thin and fragile as a spider's web. You are trapped in a cage where the keepers are violent, the customers are violent, and the world outside the cage is just as violent, but without the pretense of a lock on the door. Safety is not a right. It is a commodity you can't afford. The law of the city is one thing in the bright, revealing light of day. It is another thing entirely in the dark. You learn that Rome has two lives, the one lived under the sun, and the one that begins when it sets. And it is in this second, darker life that you are now expected to operate. The lupanar's business doesn't end when the shops close. In fact, for a certain type of clientele, it is the only time it can begin. The night shift brings out the secretive, the ashamed and the truly desperate men whose needs and choices, much like themselves, are best kept in the shadows. The most jarring and foundational fact of this world is the darkness. Ancient Rome has no public streetlights. Once the sun is gone, the city is plunged into a profound, suffocating blackness, absolute and unnerving. The only light comes from the sliver of moon if it's out, or from the flickering, bouncing flame of a private torch or lamp. Navigating the streets at night becomes a treacherous game of memory and luck. Is that dark patch ahead a puddle of filthy water, a deep pothole, or a sleeping drunk? You learn to walk with a slow, shuffling gait, your feet feeling for obstacles like you're wading into a dark, uncertain ocean. Sounds at night are different too. Without the constant daytime roar of the crowds and carts, every small noise is amplified. The scuttling of a rat in a pile of refuse sounds like a wild animal. A door slamming shut in a nearby insula sounds like a thunderclap. A distant shout could be revelry or a cry for help. You never know, and you learn not to investigate. The city, which is a living, breathing creature by day, feels like a corpse at night, and you are a ghost moving through its dead, dark arteries. One night, this abstract danger becomes your immediate reality. A message arrives for Marcus, delivered by a slave in a wealthy household's livery. A high-value client, a senator you have been sent to before, requests your presence at his private villa on the Aventine Hill. The fee offered is enormous. There is no question of Marcus refusing. The commute, you think grimly, is about to be terrible. He assigns his usual enforcer, a silent, brutish man named Gnaeus, to escort you. Gnaeus's job is not to protect your well-being, but to ensure the Leno's valuable property arrives at its destination intact. You step out of the lupanar and into the deep, inky blackness of the Subura. Gnaeus holds a single, sputtering torch which casts a small, nervous bubble of orange light around you. The shadows it creates leap and dance, transforming familiar doorways into gaping, monstrous mouths. He walks with a tense, practiced speed, and you hurry to keep up your hand, clutching the small knife you keep hidden in your sleeve, though you know it would be useless against any real threat. Your journey is a study in the contested nature of Roman nightlife. The satirist Juvenal wrote of the night as a time of pure terror, of falling debris from windows and murderous thugs lurking in every shadow. But historians still debate whether the entire city truly died after dark. Was it all just fear and silence? Or were there pockets of life that continued to burn through the night? As you travel, you see that both are true. You pass through entire blocks of absolute terrifying silence, the only sound your own footsteps and the hiss of the torch. Then you will turn a corner and be hit by a wall of light and noise spilling from a tavern that is still doing a roaring trade full of gamblers and drunks. You pass the open door of a bakery, the interior glowing from the heat of the ovens where bakers are already preparing the next day's bread. The city at night is not dead, but a patchwork of deep darkness and small, feverish islands of activity. As you hurry through a particularly dark stretch, you hear the rhythmic tramp of sandals on stone. Gnios pushes you into a doorway and extinguishes the torch, plunging you into total blackness. A patrol of the Vigiles is making its rounds. You see the light of their torches approaching. There are 4 of them moving as a unit. They are the city's closest thing to a police force. As they pass, you hear a voice call out from the darkness ahead, challenging them. A single hushed word is exchanged. It's the quirky procedural detail of the Roman night, the watchword, or tessera. The patrol's leader, the tesserarius, has confirmed the identity of another watchman. It's a tiny piece of official order in the overwhelming chaos. But they offer you no comfort. You know they are not here to protect you. They are here to put out fires and catch runaway slaves. They pass by your hiding spot, their light receding oblivious to your presence. And Gnios waits a full minute before relighting your torch. You finally leave the slums behind, climbing the hill to where the air is cleaner and the houses are hidden behind high walls. You arrive at the senator's villa, a silent, imposing fortress in the dark. Gnios pounds on the heavy wooden gate. After a moment, a small grille opens, a pair of suspicious eyes peer out, and then, with the groan of heavy bolts, the door is opened. Gnios gives you a shove forward, exchanges a quiet word with the gatekeeper, and then he is gone, melting back into the darkness. You are led through a pristine, silent courtyard into the lavishly decorated house. The contrast is dizzying. You have just walked through a mile of filth, darkness, and palpable danger. You have survived the treacherous city at night. Now you must smooth your tunic, arrange your face into a pleasant smile, and begin the second part of your night's work. You have to perform the role of a charming, willing companion for a powerful man, pretending that the terrifying journey you just took was nothing at all. The night shift, you realize, is not just about the work you do with the clients. It is about surviving the darkness that surrounds them. You return from the senator's villa in the grey, pre-dawn chill, escorted back through streets that are just beginning to stir with the honest labour of the new day. Gnios deposits you at the door of the lupanar like a parcel, and you slip back inside the sleeping, stale-smelling building. The luxury of the senator's home, the mosaics, the quiet courtyards, the soft lamplight already feels like a dream. The hard, grimy reality of your cell is what is real. You are exhausted, but you know that in a few hours the Vilica will have you up for the day's chores. One of your tasks is to scrub the floors and walls of the cells. It is a thankless, endless job. But today, as you work in a cell down the hall from your own, a thin shaft of morning light illuminates a section of the plaster wall that is usually lost in shadow. It is covered absolutely layered with the faint scratches and markings of graffiti. You have seen these scribbles before, of course. They are the background texture of your world. But today, tired and raw from your journey through the night, you stop and you truly look. You are looking at the voices of the dead. This is the raw mainstream historical fact that places like the Lupanar of Pompeii have given us. The walls of these places were the public ledgers of private lives, a chaotic tapestry of messages from both the buyers and the sold. You run your fingers over the faint letters, deciphering the words. Much of it is from clients. There are simple boasts, Florus was here. There are crude reviews, Vibius had a wonderful time with Nisa for 5 asses. There are even arguments and insults between men. It's a mix of customer feedback and masculine posturing, the ancient equivalent of a dysfunctional online comment section. But then, beneath the layers of boastful male handwriting, you find them. The whispers of the women. They are quieter, often smaller and more carefully written. You see a simple name, Amaryllis, next to a series of 7 hash marks, perhaps counting her days or her clients.
In another spot, you see a heartbreakingly simple plea in Greek, the native language of many of the women brought to Rome, Kyria, have mercy. And then you find the one that makes the breath catch in your throat. Scratched carefully at eye level is a clear warning, Hic habitat infelicitas. Here dwells unhappiness. It is a stark, honest, and devastating summary of life in this room. Another message in a different hand is more practical. Beware the merchant with the scarred hand. He does not pay. It's a public service announcement from one forgotten woman to the next, a tiny act of solidarity reaching across time. Looking at the varied script, some letters crude and childish, others surprisingly elegant, you are seeing physical evidence of a fierce scholarly debate. Historians still argue about literacy rates among the Roman poor, particularly women and slaves. The official literary world belonged to elite men. But the graffiti tells a different story. It suggests that a basic functional literacy was more common than once believed. These women who were legally silenced, and whose lives were considered too insignificant to record, found a way to write their own history, one letter at a time, on the very walls that imprisoned them. They had a voice, and this was where they used it. In a dark corner near the floor, you spot something else, something that isn't a name or a phrase. It's a small, neatly scratched square of letters, R-O-M-A-O-M-A-R-O-A-R-O-M. It's a simple word, square and acrostic. It is a quirky fringe tidbit, a sign of a mind at work. It is not a cry of pain or a declaration of love. It is a puzzle, a small piece of intellectual order imposed on a chaotic, mindless existence. You imagine a woman waiting for hours in this very cell, scratching this little game into the wall to fight off the crushing, soul-destroying boredom. It is a testament not just to her literacy, but to her active thinking mind, a mind that refused to be numbed into oblivion. You sit back on your heels, the cleaning rag forgotten in your hand. The room is no longer just a grimy cell. It is an archive. It is a chorus of ghosts. You feel their presence with a sudden, overwhelming intensity. The woman who warned of the merchant, the woman who prayed in Greek, the woman who played with words to stay sane. You are not the first to live this life, and you will not be the last. You are part of a long, sorrowful, and unbroken chain. Their unhappiness is your unhappiness. Their fleeting moments of defiance and connection are yours too. A sudden impulse seizes you. You look around to make sure no one is watching. You pick up a sharp-edged piece of stone from the floor. You find a small empty space on the wall near the floor where it will not be easily noticed. With trembling hands, you scratch your own name into the plaster, Felicitas. It is a small, silent, and deeply defiant act. It is not a cry for help or a message of despair. It is a simple declaration of existence. I was here. I lived this. I survived this day. You are leaving your own whisper on the wall, a message to the future, to the next woman who will be forced to kneel on this same dirty floor. You are telling her that she is not alone. You pull your hand away from the wall, your fingertips dusty with plaster. The name you carved, Felicitas,
is a tiny, defiant scar on the skin of the building. It joins the chorus of other names, other warnings, other whispers. And in the profound quiet of the pre-dawn, looking at this archive of forgotten lives, your thoughts expand. You think beyond your own survival, beyond the walls of the Lupanar, beyond even the city of Rome itself. You begin to contemplate the echoes of this place, the long, dark shadow it will cast into a future you will never see. You think first of the law.
You think of the board clerk recording your new name in his ledger, the simple act that branded you with infamia. You think of how the law sees Delia's assault not as an attack on a person, but as damage to property. These are not just the cruel rules of your time. You sense with a chilling certainty that these ideas are powerful. They are being written down, codified, and studied. Hundreds of years from now, a great emperor named Justinian will order his scribes to collect all of Rome's laws into a massive body of work, the Corpus Juris Civilis. It is a mainstream historical fact you cannot possibly know, but your life is its raw material. The legal frameworks that define you as something less than human, that regulate and tax your body, that create a special category for the infamous and the undesirable. These concepts will be preserved in ink and parchment. They will survive the collapse of the very empire that created them, becoming the bedrock of new legal systems in new cities, haunting the future with Roman distinctions between a person and a thing. Then you think of the morality, the delicate, hypocritical dance you witness every day. You think of the senator who visits you in secret, who speaks of honor in the forum by day and seeks your company by night. You think of the merchants and the soldiers, all the married men who believe it is their natural right to use your body while demanding absolute life or death chastity from their wives. This stark double standard, this neat division of women into the pure and the defiled, the wife and the whore, feels like one of Rome's most enduring inventions. They are creating a moral blueprint that will be used to build societies for thousands of years. It's a tragedy that no one will think to get a second opinion. This idea, born in the patriarchal households of the Roman elite, will echo through centuries, shaping concepts of love, marriage, and sin in ways you can't possibly imagine. And you think of the business itself, the cold Roman genius for organization, for turning everything, even human longing, into a taxable, manageable enterprise. Marcus, your Leno, is a despicable man, but he is a businessman. The Lupanar is a business. The price lists, the specialized services, the state-issued licenses. It is a commercial model of stunning efficiency. This commodification of desire, the creation of a formal industry to service a persistent human need, will prove more durable than any aqueduct. The archetypes you live with every day. The brutal but pragmatic pimp, the weary prostitute with a sliver of hope, the client seeking a fantasy, will be endlessly reborn in the dark alleys of every city that is yet to be built. From the highest window of the Lupanar, you can sometimes see the distant gleaming marble of the temples on the Capitoline Hill. The men who walk there, the leaders of the world, worry about the stability of the empire. Historians of the future will argue endlessly about why this great civilization eventually falls. Was it barbarian invasions, economic collapse, political corruption, moral decay? From your vantage point down in the filth of the Subura, you know the answer. You see the rot every single day. You see the senator who preaches virtue and practices vice. You see the economy that runs on the bodies of slaves like you. The powerful men worry about the barbarians at the gates, but you know the foundations are crumbling from within. The empire will fall. The marble temples will be stripped and shattered.
The golden house of Nero will be buried. The Colosseum will become a ruin. The names of the emperors you fear will become footnotes in history books. But the legacy of this small, dark room of the business conducted within its walls will survive. The ideas forged here, the legal classifications, the moral hypocrisies, the cold commerce of the flesh are more resilient than stone. They are the true, eternal Rome. Your name, Felicitas, will vanish. The plaster on this wall will crumble. You and Lyra and Delia and Chloe and all the others will be utterly forgotten, lost to time, like dust in the wind. But the system that consumed you, the patterns of power and desire you were forced to navigate, will echo in eternity. You are a ghost, not of the past, but of the future. And so our journey through the Roman night comes to a quiet and gentle close. The story is over now, and the heavy, shadowed world of the Subura can begin to dissolve and fade away, leaving you safe and sound where you are. Let the flickering images of torchlit alleys and painted faces soften into a comfortable darkness, and allow the distant echoing sounds of that ancient city to be replaced by the soft, familiar hum of your own quiet room. The worries and the fears of that life are not yours to carry. You were just a visitor, a silent observer drifting through time. And now you have returned. You can feel the gentle weight of your own blanket, the softness of your own pillow, as your breathing slows, becoming deeper and more regular with each passing moment. There is nothing left to do now, nothing left to see, except to allow yourself to drift on this peaceful, easy current, letting it carry you away from the shores of wakefulness and into the calm, quiet sea of your own sweet dreams. The night is peaceful, your mind is quiet, and it is time now to simply rest. End of script. Sweet dreams.